That's right. It's getting my what is that? My feng shui or
Yeah.
what do you call it?
Feng shui. Yes.
All right, we're live. All right, welcome back to another episode of Persuasion by the Pint. I'm Jonathan Taylor, along with
Sean McCool. And Jonathan, today we've got a special guest on the show. We've been lining up the guests lately, haven't we?
Back to back to back.
Yeah, it just makes our job so much easier. We drink beer, let them talk.
That's right. That's right. We don't have to think too much on those days.
No research, no nothing. Just,
think about what we're drinking.
Yeah. I guess we did have to read a book last week. So we do that anyway. Right. So no big
Occasionally
deal,
we venture away from the juvenile, as some have labeled our show a juvenile show, and we venture into some education every now and then.
So today we're going to be talking about how to piggyback current events, boost your own PR, those kind of things. And we have got a special guest. It's actually somebody I've worked with in the past. And her name is Michelle Love. She's a PR guru. That's what we're going to give her a title of that today. So why don't we go ahead and bring her in? Jonathan, I'll bring her in. You cue up the audience, get them all riled up.
Hey, you guys get ready out there. Okay.
Here she comes.
There we go.
In our not so live studio audience.
That was quite the entrance there, Michelle.
Yes. Such a warm welcome. I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah. So for those listening, Michelle and I worked at, I'm not going to name the place. I'm just going to say we worked at the same company for, I don't know, about 3 months. And then things happened and we all went our separate ways. So yeah, but it was good to meet. We got to spend a week on an island, right?
We did.
That was nice. So
the highest views on my Instagram is the heli ride landing in. It's at 29.9 thousand views.
Wow.
I had just started my Instagram for purposes of that soiree. And and it's all organic because I had like 3 contacts at the time on Instagram. So I feel like that's a huge success.
Yeah, my daughter always says anything with the ocean in blue, just does really well on Instagram. So that's why she moved to Florida. You're still in Florida, Michelle?
So sorry?
Are you still in Florida?
I am in Florida, Tampa, the hotbed of all hotbeds. It's just so beautiful in Tampa, so close to everything. Really amazing. There's quite a tourist destination now. It wasn't when we first moved here in, I think, 2015, but certainly now it is. And Tom Brady moving here at the Gronk and all that other nonsense that ensued certainly helped the notoriety.
Yeah, for sure. My daughter just actually moved to that area. She's outside of Tampa a little bit, but that's where she just moved to. So she's in the area as well.
Well, it sounds like you'll be here soon.
Might. Who knows? We'll see.
What was the island? What was the island you guys?
Sister Rock? Is that what it was?
East Sister Rock. It's the size of what, a mile? No, maybe a quarter mile.
Oh, it's not even a quarter mile. It's big enough for a house and a pool, and that was about it. So not much on it.
Sounds like
my luggage. My luggage is completely soaked, salt stained because it wasn't really a dinghy, but it behaved worse than a dinghy. And Sean is captain.
Yeah, it was a beat up little boat to get you from shore to the island because it was about 500. It was probably 1,000 yards from shore to the house, but you had to take a little boat, and it was through the coral and all the stuff. So we'd bottom out every once in a while at low tide, just crazy stuff. But it was, it was the rental boat that you use when you rent the house. So it wasn't a nice boat, because they knew you were going to damage it. So it would leak, it would get water in it, it'd do all kinds of stuff. But yeah, no, it was a fun time. I was glad to get off though. A week was too long with as many people as we had there and all that stuff. So
we could write a whole memoir about that week.
For sure. Yeah.
So much.
Be some good.
It was all good behaved activity as well. Nothing outrageous as you might not expect.
No, it was all business stuff, but it was just too many people for too long. That's was the bottom line. So
yeah.
All right. Well, Michelle, I think you just have water today, right?
I do.
Do you have a special kind, or is it just tap water? Is it filtered? Is
It
it
is filtered water,
okay? Do you use special
cold,
filters or anything like that?
reverse osmosis, carbon, and I don't know the other
So there you go.
name of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
fancy filters. So. Well, we're gonna we'll quickly do our beers. I've actually got a returning beer on, so we won't have to go into a lot of depths, but I'll just go ahead and share mine real quick. If you'll hold tight, Michelle, for our little juvenile beer talk, as one person called it, but we still like it. So I'm having something from Tupps Brewery. So if you guys remember Tupps Brewery that are listening, they have the Full Grown Man series is my favorite. That's really nice premium imperial stouts. And today we are having, since it's almost Halloween, a Full Grown Jack.
That doesn't look familiar. I mean, have you had that one before?
I had it last Halloween or the Halloween before for sure.
Okay. All right.
So yeah, this is Full Grown Jack. It's imperial stout with pumpkin spices. Right?
Okay.
I know you said last week you're not doing pumpkin spice, but
Not
this gets
year.
a pass.
I'm getting
Full Grown Jack, that gets a pass.
Okay. I'll take your word for it.
Okay. And what are you having, Jonathan?
I also have a returning guest. I have a New Heights. This is from New Heights Brewing Company over in Nashville. This is a Navel Gazer.
Oh yeah.
Imperial stout. So 9.5.
It's that time of year, imperial stouts.
Yep.
Oh yeah, I forgot to say it. Mine is 12.1.
12. Oh, golly.
Cough
All right, Michelle, that gives you some indication. 9.5 and a 12%. So you will be doing a lot of the.
You'll be running the show today.
You got it.
All right. So, well, let's cheers it up. Cheers, everybody, to a good show.
Cheers.
All about PR secrets and stuff. There we go. So we got sound effects and everything, Michelle.
I love it.
We're dealing here.
Well, that's why you're the number 2 seat in the Persuasion podcast.
That's right.
Thank you for bringing that up.
Yes.
About to be what number 1.
It sounds better when other guests say it.
When they know that. That.
Right.
Awesome. You did your research.
That's what I'm here for.
So Michelle, we're talking about PR today. That's your background, but get us up to speed how you got into PR and kind of where you're at now, and then we'll get into kind of the PR secrets and some examples that you're going to talk about and things like that. But first, give the people a little background on who you are.
Sounds good. So I basically entered PR almost by mistake. In my early career, I had the pleasure of working at a very sophisticated economic and community redevelopment agency as a finance director, and ultimately became the executive director. There is redeveloping Milwaukee, a very hip now place in Milwaukee, and then ventured into housing redevelopment because of that, and economic brownfield redevelopment, and worked with a variety of people. And how apropos for the show, I then went to work for Miller Brewing, Philip Morris, at a time when they still allowed cigarette smoking in the cubicles. That's how far the way back that was. But it was really an interesting place for me because I was doing marketing analyst work for all the brands, and they were owned by Kraft at the time, in Philip Morris. And so I had this really great foundational financial expertise, but then the marketing entree, and I was really missing like being out with the community, dealing with fundraising and government officials, and really was in PR, but didn't realize it at the time when I was in nonprofit management. And so I went to the leadership and said, hey, Philip Morris, we're not represented in the brownfield redevelopment effort in Milwaukee, which now housed, at the time it was called Miller Park, but the first retractable Milwaukee or baseball stadium, right? The Major League Baseball stadium. And so they allowed me and said, as long as your analyst work is done, feel free. So I represented Miller Brewing in that relationship, and it was fantastic. So that's kind of how I got into PR. I guess I was in it before I really realized what it was. And then went to a direct marketing agency and built their, which at that time was housing mortgages, subprime mortgage marketing, and built out their PR branding division, full service. We had it in healthcare, technology in a wholesale way. And that was really the formal entry into the agency business. And so I've been in that space for quite some time, worked with all sorts of clients, everything from startup organizations, nonprofit, publicly held organizations, helped launch the Audacious Beer Celebration, hosted by the Rotary. So all these historic intersections to Persuasion by the Pint, in hindsight, right? So
you've been preparing for this show for just
it's yeah,
amazing.
who knew?
It's amazing.
So it's been really an interesting ride. And of course, PR is, I find it interesting because people really like to identify me with PR. I was like, I know all pieces of marketing, but I finally am leaning into that. Like, give the people what they want, if that's what people want. Yeah. And yes, I have that skill. I have other skills as well, but I do have an innate ability, I think, because of my business training. When I was running the nonprofit agency, I went through as an adult learner. I went through all of my college as an adult education participant, College of the Air, online, weekend college, and went through my executive master's when I was running the nonprofit. So I have that business acumen first, and then look at, communication solutions for solving business problems. So in a nutshell, that's a little bit about me.
Yeah. So is that last thing you said, is that how, because I was going to ask you, how do you define PR? Is that how you define it?
So really, PR is earned, not paid. So there are so many tools in the toolbox of public relations. And I've seen, and there are even memes about this, where PR does not stand for press release. So many people use them interchangeably. Yeah. And so public relations is a formal name in PR, the short abbreviation, but really anything that is not able to be paid for. You have to earn it organic. And obviously social media is a huge piece of that. Wasn't back in the day, you only had sort of press releases and feature stories, and then of course blogs became a thing. So social media is so important and is so generally inexpensive, but corporations, we're seeing companies spending $30,000 a month or upward on their content, because content is king, as you know, is being in the business. I mean, it drives everything. Even before it was named content, it was still driving all marketing communications, all public relations, and whatnot. So the traditional public relations is media relations, maybe government and community relations. And of course, now social media being one of the huge drivers of most PR efforts.
Yeah, I think it's also a good place. I know a lot of customer service is moving, which is, I guess, a form of PR, right? Especially if people are complaining. And a lot of that's moving on to social media, because I know my wife, if she can't get a response by email, she just goes to their Twitter and like within minutes gets a response.
Exactly. Yeah. That reputation management piece of it is so important.
Yeah. It's funny how that works. So that's cool. I had no idea you'd been preparing so long for our podcast. So that's really good. That's really good to know.
Yeah, so that's you put in a little too much work. Apparently, that's what Sean. But it's always better to be over prepared, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, give us, what are your favorite examples? You sent me a list, so tell me, like, what are some of your favorite examples? That you sent me a list, kind of old, kind of new, some in between. So, talk about some of your favorite examples of PR, and then why. We'll start with. Which one do you want to go first? You want to go old or new first?
Let's go with new, and because this is going to have such a long shelf life, it'll be old news before the next group of viewers see it. But the trailer effect: Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce.
Okay.
Any NFL pairing of all time. I'm just going to editorialize for a minute and say, please stop. I'm watching NFL to watch the NFL, and it's basically overplayed, but hugely successful specifically for Travis Kelce right now. You also see just interesting timing of all of the paid commercials. You know that it takes some time to produce a commercial. We can do it quickly, right? We can be lean and mean, and we can get really great content produced very, very quickly. But at the level that they're producing national commercials, it's not that way. So these things have been planned out, obviously, for quite some time. So I'll just sort of lob that out there and gauge your reaction. And, you know, is it really what it appears to be? Time will tell.
So you think
that sounds like, it seems like a really real relationship. I think it just kind of, it's just nothing but romance there. There's no
no agenda, right?
No agenda whatsoever.
Yeah, of course not. What's who's it? Ryan Reynolds, right? He's the exception to that, Michelle. They do a really good job. His agency that he has they actually have a thing where they can make a commercial in 36 hours because they use a lot of news. You know, when they piggyback off news for their different brands, whether it's Mint Mobile or aviation or whatever. I read an article about him that he set up an agency that will specifically built to take advantage of news. So they'll do national level commercials in 36 hours.
Amazing.
Nice.
Cool. Yeah.
He's so talented.
Oh, it's amazing. I mean, he just went off the rails with the whole soccer thing, but other than that, he's a cool guy. But I guess if you want to get international fans, it's not a bad move.
No, not at all.
So go a little bit deeper with the, and I agree with you, by the way. We said the exact same thing last weekend. We were watching the Chiefs game and they kept showing Taylor Swift. And I think my wife said, she's like, I don't want to see Taylor Swift. I'm watching the game. Like, it's like bringing politics into a football game or a sporting event, right? It's just, it just feels forced. It feels over the top. In your opinion, editorializing or whatever, who do you think is benefiting more from these? I think you said Travis, but why do you say that?
Definitely Travis. So just pulling a little detail here in terms of jersey sales and followers. So he went, just going to read this. Kelsey, whose name jumped in search interest on Google with a 70% increase since its last peak on February 12th when he won the Super Bowl. So he's seen his social media following grown from 1.1 million to 4.4 million since the first rumors about his involvement with Swift started.
Wow.
And it's also translated into financial gains for the Chiefs. His jersey reportedly had a 400% spike in sales through the Fanatics network of sites.
Wow.
And enter Erin Andrews. So Erin Andrews has been on the daytime circuit. And of course, she has recently launched a clothing line through Fanatics. And the sweatshirt that Taylor most recently wore was one that Erin had provided. But Erin introduced them, according to what she claims on the circuit. So so many spokes tying into the center.
What an interesting web we weave.
Yeah.
The depth here. Oh, that's
some lot of interest there, right?
So Erin Andrews is kind of taken over because Alyssa Milano was the original like women's jersey like kind of person, and then she said something stupid, I think, and then everybody stopped liking her, and then so I guess Erin Andrews has got her line now. But that's interesting. I did not know that tie about that the jerseys specifically, and then because that would be the women's jersey, so that's probably what's selling, I guess, the most.
The sweatshirt for the women, yep. And then I don't, but we can get it. So the Kelsey's jerseys are really, I mean, he's really taken the gains on this, and then. You know, his brother. So the story with his brother who plays for the Eagles, maybe?
Yeah, Philly.
Yep.
He's a lineman, though. He doesn't get any jersey sales.
He does that. But his mom, so all three of them are in commercials together as well.
Oh, yeah. So the Campbells? Campbells?
And they have a Netflix documentary, too, that came out this year.
So the timing, is interesting.
Yeah. It's interesting when you're in the business. Like, I noticed things in copywriting that probably a lot of people miss. Jonathan noticed things in sales and that kind of distribution, that kind of stuff. So it's cool to see through the eyes of somebody who understands all the things that could be linked together and starts to see the link. So that's pretty That's pretty cool to see all those things.
So you think, so I'm going back to your original point that it benefits Travis much more than it benefits Taylor Swift, because she's got, I mean, obviously she's got a global
she's doing
brand, right? I mean, so that it does make sense. So she's pulling in a lot of people that otherwise would not be interested in the Kansas City Chiefs or, you know, a tight end named Travis Kelce. I mean, that's getting him a ton of eyeballs right there. And what was the increase? What did you say? The his jersey increase in sales? What is that?
So his jersey, 400% spike in jersey sales through Fanatics alone.
Wow.
And his followers in social media went from 1.1 to 4.4 million.
So about the same, 400% or so.
So
what do you think? What do you think? Let's say that. Let's go ahead, just be, you know, rude and skeptical.
Cynical.
Yeah, let's be cynical about this, grumpy old people, and be like, hey,
we know what's going
what's
on
in it for, if it's not a true relationship, what's in it for Taylor?
Well, I think she does it presents as if she does like him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you think it's legit? It just.
He does have good fashion. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah. So you think it's.
He drives a Rolls Royce too. All right. I saw that.
You think it's a little more than coincidental, but you think it might be real. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah. I'll wait and see how long this might last.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you search, there's already, you know, people have done the favor for Taylor. They've already written breakup songs with featuring Kelce, with football lingo and all that kind of stuff. So she doesn't even have to write the lyrics when it comes time to do the breakup song. So
yeah, there's so many things you could fumble, you could intercept, you could punt. Yeah, I mean, it's just so many things.
Yeah, just an easy. That song writes itself almost. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Yeah.
Do you think this benefits? I'm sure it benefits the NFL brand too. I mean, there's a vested interest not only from him, but you know, NFL is probably looking at this from a standpoint of, you know, people bringing in more, you know, viewers. Do you know, there any stats on what the viewership has gone up and, you know, since this relationship? I'm sure those numbers have probably increased on every night that they're.
There was like a 40%, and don't quote me on the stat, but there was already a 40% female viewership to the NFL and growing. And I know they were really purposefully appealing to the female audience to broaden that out as a campaign initiative and a strategic focus. And so I would imagine that's, you know, grown since that time. I see it looks like Sean's researching as we speak.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it says NBC's, let's see what, is this the right one? NBC's Sunday Night Football drew an audience of 27 million viewers, up 22% from the same week a year ago, as the rumored relationship between Swift and Kansas City Chiefs tight end pulled in additional fans.
Yeah.
That included 2 million more women than usual, the network said.
Yeah. That's
so
significant. And, you know, and they're all, you know, the NFL is trying to expand its its footprint over in Europe, which is, you know, been an ongoing thing. You know, they have this week seems like Germany. More and more games every year they're doing in England.
The next 2 weeks are in Germany. So they're expanding. Yep. It's here. It says for October 3rd from the Kansas City Star, it says, all the ads are loading. Oh, gotta have a subscription to read that one. So the blurb says Kansas City had a 47.8 rating for the game, which was the highest of any market. St. Louis was second. So they had the highest local rating on October 3rd.
Wow.
The Chiefs did. So yeah, it's working. If that's part of the plan, or if it's a nice byproduct anyway. So that's interesting. So.
Lance Bass was in one of the box seats, and he was holding up a sign that he was not Taylor Swift. He got a sliver of coverage, despite the new Trolls movie coming out.
So that's
NSYNC's.
That's a good example of piggybacking on PR, right? I mean, he's he's at a game. He's like, hey, I'm going to take a little sign that says I'm not Taylor Swift, right? Because they know, these celebrities know they're going to get at least one shot while they're there at the game, right? Because
of course
they love to pan.
What was the game a few weeks ago where they played the Jets? I mean, it was in New York City, and it was like, the game against, I think it was a Sunday night game, and you had who's the guy that plays Wolverine? Gosh, why am I thinking of
Hugh Jackman?
Hugh Jackman was there.
Yep.
And then Ryan Reynolds was there too, right? I mean, he was there. And so they were all like within the vicinity. I mean, you looked at it, they were close to that area where, that big, box was, where everybody, her, the Travis Kelce, Taylor Swift band was.
Yeah. So Michelle, do you think, do those guys' agents say, hey, you need to get to an NFL game or stuff like that? Or is that just their own thinking, or are they encouraged to do that by their PR agents?
Yeah, their PR agents are scripting a lot of things. I think when you're at that level, and she's superstar status, there is that extra, she probably commands much of her schedule.
Yeah.
I remember seeing Taylor Swift as a opening act for Rascal Flatts back in the day. And she's definitely talented, and she's been able to harness, but I would expect that, I'd love to see the statistics on the viewership, if that's really brought the younger demographic that maybe isn't tuned into sitting by a TV. Like, they might be streaming on their phone or whatever, but are they planning an afternoon around football? I come from a football family, so my brother, coached JFL. We were always at games, every hometown, centered around Friday night, Sundays around TV, now Thursdays and Mondays. But I'm not sure that that's something that generations, newer than ours does. I really don't know.
Right.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. So this is a big news event. It's still going on a little bit, especially on Sundays, maybe Monday mornings. How could our listeners kind of piggyback? Is there a way for our listeners to piggyback off this kind of stuff?
Well, I think that really a lot of public relations contain self-created opportunities. I've worked with a lot, say for instance, tech companies, and in terms of startup, they're like, we just have our product and that's what we have. And so really counseling them and saying, just really let me at that, because we create our own opportunities. They're self-made. Some examples of that are like scholarship programs, right? Or Shark Tank, so fantastically successful, so interesting, so many great business stories. It's educational, a lot of human interest, mostly consumer product goods or consumer-based solutions. Right. But you have serious amount of business entities creating their own spin-off Shark Tank competition. So a lot of this, I feel, is pop culture inspired, and then whatever's hitting that, taking and applying that, and especially with a B2B play. In my opinion, some of the best programs that we've run have been business to consumer inspired, and then laid over and retrofit to make it B2B, because B2B, business to business, can be very boring if it's not approached correctly. And so taking these elements of what's, current and what people are chatting about, and designing programs, contests, promotions around that, even these events, maybe you're doing like a skit or a talent show, more fitting, inside that is a nod to a certain pop culture phenomenon. Those are all great ways. But I really like Canine for Warriors. Canine for Warriors is, to me, something that can really be brought into pretty much any organization and be fitting, because it's purpose in helping both the animal that needs to be rescued, as well as the veteran that have gone through military trauma. Really, any organization, I feel, could partner with Canine for Warriors and be relevant in any time of the year. So I really love that organization. I think it's just so fantastic, the work that they're doing.
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea. Like you said, there's probably, if not this is a good example that we've got on the screen here. There's so many of these types of organizations that it's it's almost impossible to offend your audience, especially
Right.
in anything in the animal world. It's almost, I mean, unless you're PETA and you're selling, something else like guns, you're probably not going to, those two probably may not line up. But most people are not going to have a problem with Humane Society or, Canine for Warriors, things like that. So I think that's a great example of, to say, hey, a percentage of sales goes to this, on your checkout page. I think that's a great way to, that's more of a marketing thing. But yeah, to partner with these, how would you recommend, like, let's take something small, like, and then we'll go bigger, but let's take something small, like a life coach who's, out in the public, they're on Instagram all the time. How would they take Canine for Warriors and increase the look and the feel of their business?
Well, they could partner with them and they could use that as a fundraising vehicle that has really nothing to do specifically even with the sale. You could do like a roundup or something like that. But I think a lot of people really get offended with roundup programs. Maybe I'm just overlaying my own bias on that. But
so what is a roundup program?
So a roundup program would be at checkout. Do you want to spend an extra 20 cents to do this or that?
Yeah, I hate those.
Okay, I'm not alone. I really think it's much stronger to offer it, you're pairing with them and really call it out as a special event. It might not be an in-person special event, but a virtual or a cause-based special event where we could promote it, for instance, through social media, a press release, through ambassador programs with your employees, and then really doing a fundraising or a sponsorship with them. You can also have Canines for Warriors come to your event if it's large enough, and they will come and be represented at your event. So, and the national reach of this is so fantastic. It hits all demographics, all income levels. I think it's really a fantastic, and as you mentioned, it's really not controversial. And that's the other thing you really need to be careful of is you're trying to appease all people. You're probably not able to do that with many, many things. In fact, some of the most successful efforts make people infuriated, but they really hit their core audience. Canine for Warriors is one that is very neutral and, universal for all the right reasons.
Right.
Yeah. Speaking of controversial, since you went there, I'll go there next. This was not on your list, by the way, so this is a surprise for you, Michelle. I'd love to hear your opinion, both from a PR standpoint and maybe a marketing, if you want to go there. Bud Light and UFC.
Oh my gosh, shocking pairing.
Yes.
What has Dana White thoughts? Is this the Bud Light revival or downfall of the UFC?
Yeah, and it's interesting too because I totally missed this. I kind of stopped watching UFC actually a couple months ago, just for some other reasons. But I didn't realize they had merged with WWE, and now there's a new thing called TKO. So I don't know if WWE has some pull in that. And I was reading some research on it, and it's $105 million a year, which sounds like a lot of money, but that's like one really good pay-per-view event from UFC. So I don't understand. It doesn't seem to make sense to me financially because those two views, like their core audience, just seems just absolutely opposite of what's going on with the Bud Light controversy. What do you see as a PR person?
Well, as a PR person, I'm perplexed by it. I look at it as probably Bud Light feeling like this is locked in and this will convert the hardcore sort of beer drinker that has abandoned them because of the demographic, tough fighting, all of that kind of thing. And maybe they feel it's just so guaranteed if they were and have partnered in this way. But I'm really interested to see how it pans out. On a personal note, I'm concerned about that being now the conversation in front of a very wide age demographic. There's a lot of children that are involved and go watch UFC fighting, WWE. So the broad brush of viewership and bringing this controversy to impressionable young minds, that concerns me as an individual.
Yeah. Yeah. I was shocked when I saw that. It's like, I mean, Dana White's a smart guy. So I don't know if there's something I'm missing, but it
Isn't
seems
Bud Light already partnered with the NFL though? I mean, they're served in so many stadiums.
I mean, last week David said, I never looked it up, but David said last week that Bud Light had filed for bankruptcy, which I guess was probably a reorg, not a actual.
Yeah, that doesn't mean that. I mean, it just means they're reorganizing.
Right.
They're not going away.
I'm sure it's popular beer brand files for bankruptcy.
But yeah, I mean, they're still serving in NFL stadiums all over the place. So I don't think that's. It did surprise me though with. I mean that combination though.
One of my friends posted on Facebook. They're like, "Is this like, is good for Bud Light or bad for the UFC?" And I think it's definitely. I think it's more. I think both companies are underestimating how upset this made the people that boycotted Bud Light. Mm-hmm. I think they're totally underestimating it.
Yeah. Well,
I think people are absolutely willing to boycott UFC, which if you just do a search, there's already a lot of calls for it. Yeah. Will it actually happen? I don't know. People's behavior is different than what their talk is, but they have held remarkably strong on this Bud Light stance. Like it's been whether you agree with it or not, the resolve has been pretty impressive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they double down for sure.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize, Jonathan, that what you were saying about the NFL. So it's interesting that is not the conversation at that platform and in that venue partnership, but it is in this. So
it is.
Yeah, good point.
I think it's because it's like a new partnership, maybe that it's attracting some attention. Whereas like the NFL never bailed one way or the other. They never really took a side.
Right.
And the stadiums are going to keep selling beer. But you can bet beer sales were down. I mean, there was pics on Instagram. People were choosing different lines. The kiosks, the Bud Light kiosks were empty. Like it still affected them big time.
Yes.
And it's interesting. Like, what does Modelo do? Like, does Modelo take advantage of this with some of their ads? Do they get involved? How do they play this? Because they were the UFC beer for the last 3 or 4 years.
Yeah.
And a lot of people switched to Modelo.
Mm-hmm.
So
absolutely.
It'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Coors and Modelo definitely have benefited from all of this.
Big time.
So I'm interested in one other thing. Liquid, what's the other? Liquid Death? Because Sean and I have talked about this brand on our show, and they've done some pretty amazing things. Interesting story, and the fact that they're doing, I think they've got like Sean, I don't know if we talked about this, but like people, they're like doing like they're turning like people that are just like putting hate comments against them, they're turning into music videos and stuff like that. I think that's hilarious, but maybe you've got something new to share, Michelle, on Liquid Death, because it seems like a brand that has really grown pretty fast. I mean, it's like I didn't know anything about them like a year ago, but all of a sudden they're everywhere.
Oh wow!
Yeah, Liquid Death. It was so interesting. I was not aware that it was a water. So true story. A couple months ago, my daughter and I were at, I forget what country concert. Oh, Sam Hunt. A couple of other people. I have to look back at Instagram and figure out what it was. But I just wanted a water, and Liquid Death was really the only water that they're selling in a can. So the organization, and then when you go to the pit, and we had great pit placement, you have to dump the can into a plastic cup, right? Because of the safety of people throwing things. So I was like, oh, this is interesting. Of course, give me a double cup so I can hold it more steadily. But the premier pricing of water, that is the only option. So in May 2020 or 22, they ended up partnering. Let me get my dates here right.
While you're looking that up, I had no idea. While you're looking that up, I had no idea they had already moved into iced tea and.
Yeah, their tea's actually pretty good. I've had their tea. It's really good.
Realize that.
Yeah, so in May 21, Liquid Death raised an additional 15 million in Series C funding, and they completed that with Live Nation, and they would sell the drink exclusively at their events and venues for a period of time. And then since then, they've been selling at Publix and Sprouts, and in January 22, they received 5.25 million valuation. So yeah, it was really just some individuals that created this, a tall boy water drink, and let's see, founded with a murder for thirst.
Yeah, their names are crazy. They've got some really cool.
It's so interesting.
But the original idea was like death to plastic, right?
Well, so I was looking at Wikipedia, and they were saying that their name was really coming from kind of making their way. So their history, Delaware native, a graphic designer, inspired to create Liquid Death after watching the Vans Warped Tour in 2001, in which concert goers would drink water out of Monster Energy cans to stay hydrated.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's their target. I mean, they're looking to capitalize off of the energy drinks, the Monsters, the Red Bull crowd. But then you got this other contingency of people that drink hard seltzers too out of a can too. So if you notice, their cans actually look like a hard seltzer, right? Like a
like an energy drink.
Yeah, I turned it away. I was like, no, I'm not interested. I just want to drink water. And they're like, it is. My daughter's like, it is water. I was like, what? So true story. Then when they're quite pricey, drinks at concerts are not cheap, even the water. Yeah. So she was refilling her drink, and I was like, no, I'll just take another cup of water. Of course, you already have the plastic clear glass because you're in the pit.
Yeah.
So she comes back, and I was convinced it was tap water. It didn't taste anything like it once I did not see the can and was drinking it completely only out of the cup. So she's like, no, I just didn't want to tell you because, you would tell me not to spend that kind of money on 3 waters. I was like, okay, Brett, it's like $21 of three waters. But
it's like the airport, right? They got you.
Exactly.
Yep,
exactly.
They get you every time.
Yeah.
I've had their Arnold Palmer, which you showed a picture of. It's the armless Palmer.
No.
The armless Palmer. Yes. It's actually not bad at all, but I agree with you. Some of their waters just are like, there's nothing to it. I don't know. I mean,
well, is this PR or is this marketing or is it both? It seems like it's kind of both, right, Michelle? It's great marketing, which leads to and lends itself to great PR.
Exactly. Yeah, there's such an intertwinement.
Have you seen, like we were talking about, like they've taken like people that are really just roasting them on the internet? I mean, they literally take their comments and turn them into music videos, which I think is hilarious.
It's so good.
That's like a millennial thing to do, which I really respect about that crowd.
Own it.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I love that.
I think our generation
basically
would
just own it.
Yeah, our generation would typically like kind of shy away from that and try to control it. Yep. And I think the younger companies, they've realized like you can't fight this stuff, so you might as well embrace it.
Yeah.
Oh, you guys will love this story. So this goes back a little bit of time, but in one of the most conservative industries, banking. Had a client, now they call it fintech. I'm like so dating myself back in the day, but in the way backs. So we had this client, very conservative, National Trade Banking Association event. And I won't go into too many details because the person will be identifiable, which is not what I'm intending. And so the next day, the story was this individual was wrapped around with the evening clothes on, and I won't go into details on that, around the palm tree in the lobby of the convention hotel. Wow. Wrapped around with some sort of tape. So I'm the PR person. And what do? right? So I say we lean in. I mean, this is the talk of the convention. You know, this is not like it's an entertainment industry where this is just nobody pays attention to this. This is not that at all. So I thought about it for a minute and launched a very effective print campaign that we put in all the same trade publications about geniuses being misunderstood. It was wildly successful because a person is a creative, they cannot be told what to do, super smart, based in California. You know, I'm like, we need to own this. And what better way, you know, just because somebody has too much fun one night doesn't undo all of the other great things that they have done and what great people they are. And so it was super effective. We had, you know, campaigns showing like Einstein and some other things and like line drawing, you know, real art drawing. It was really fantastic. And did a couple of spin-offs of that. So the best solution really is to own it, lean into it. And no one can be embarrassed about that because this is that genuine individual. If you want to pair with this organization, you're going to get some of the best technology and they're going to be the funnest, most fun people to hang around at the convention.
Yeah. That's brilliant. That's a great spin. That's really good. I like that. So, especially in a conservative industry. Yes. And it is, you know, it's so much easier, I think, maybe not at first, but once you wrap your head around it and kind of understand it, I think it's much easier to lean into it than it is to defend it.
Oh,
like you can
100%.
never win defending. Like you just, especially in a social media world. Like maybe in the print days, you could put some stuff out and you could kind of control the narrative a little bit more. But the social media is so fast, I mean, and so many people, you can't fight it. It's like fighting
in this day and age. Is what is the old adage? Any publicity is good publicity, whether it's bad or good. So you can find a way to work it to your advantage. I'm sure.
You have to. A famous person wrote a book called "There's No Such Thing as Bad Publicity," and it certainly is true. Lean into it. All conversation. Now, you know, you could argue that if valuation drops, stock price drops, that's not. But when you look at the sheer value of the cost of advertising, which is going up by the minute, to get that coverage, to have your brand recall, your name in front of someone time and time and time and time again. You know, the goal, what I always work with individuals and corporations is to put enough positive deposits in so that when something negative does happen, and it will, and the bigger you are, the more frequently it will happen, that there's money in the bank to draw from. It's, you know, balancing it out because by its sheer structure, public relations is uncontrolled. So the goal is to get as much controlled hits, you know, clicks, views, impressions out there so that when those negative things do happen, you know, it could be anything that you're not even aware of or have control over that all of a sudden hits you in the press, you know, some supplier X rogue or anything. It's not even necessarily part of your company that your brand could be tainted by. And so the goal really is to get as much positive coverage in as many venues as possible so that you do have that, you know, bank balance to draw from, so to speak.
Let's talk a little bit. We'll get to one of your kind of older examples here in a minute, but I really want to bring this home for the listeners and the viewers. Like, do you have a system? Is there a news feed you subscribe to? Is there anything like that that you can look for ideas that you can piggyback off of? Whether it's the Taylor Swift thing, whether it's the UFC thing, like, you know, whether it's in social media, you know, riding a trend or something like that. Is there kind of a way to systematize that with your team or with yourself, if you're a solopreneur, to take advantage of all these trends, all these hot topics? And I notice, Jonathan's done a good job. Like, we'll title some of our podcast with somebody who might be in the news, you know, whether it's Elon Musk or Trump or whatever. And those podcasts always get higher ratings, like higher downloads. We should have we should have put Taylor Swift's name in this one, but
we will. Trust me. On the back end, we will.
So is there a systematic way or kind of a way to set that up to get notifications, or how would you recommend, smaller, most of our audience, Michelle, is going to be smaller solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, copywriters, things like that. So what advice would you have for them on that?
Yeah, I would say really just having the mainstream news feed. So and then there are also publication sourcing for reporters. So Help a Reporter Out, or Haro is a source. So there are industry tools. Yeah. So they will be able to push current events, and you can also get, Google for an inexpensive, free Google alerts around different things. But I feel like the headlines, and especially if you have multiple venues, multiple channels that you're subscribing to, whether it's Google or MSNBC or anything at all, there are so many clues about what's hot. What is the top story ranking, and really pulling in that. But I truly feel that the entertainment industry, because they really are controlling, what's being on TV, whether it's through the news channels or the entertainment television shows programming, there's so much content baked in there. So somebody that's plugged in or to streaming or otherwise, you're going to get good read on what's getting coverage simply by following the headlines in some of the mainstream publications. And I'm including Google and mainstream publications.
So do you think, I have my answer for this, and I have an answer from a famous copywriter as well. Like, do you think it's better to follow industry news that's in your industry, your niche, or pop culture, and which one do you think is better to ride?
So I like to do a blend, because you need to follow and be relevant to your audience. Too far off and they're going to just not take you seriously, and it's not going to, like, where is the intersection? So really the art and the skill of it is finding that intersection in that Venn diagram where that overlaps, to say, okay, what is that crossover point, or where is it that little impact? Or you could even have an opinion piece, depending on the flavor of your organization, your brand. If you were to be so adventurous, to start creating opinion pieces, really just to get, some dust kicked up a little bit, that's effective as well.
So if you had to pick a percentage blend of industry specific and pop culture, obviously the pop culture is with a tie back to your industry or something like that, what blend would you say? Like, is it 50-50, 60-40, 90-10?
So I'm going to say read in detail, 80% industry, and scan the headlines in the pop culture piece.
Okay.
I was going to say 75-25 industry to pop culture, but 80-20 or 80-20.
Yeah, anywhere in that range. That's kind of what I was thinking as well. Because like you said, Michelle, I think too much becomes a little childish, maybe a little like out of touch, not serious enough. Like, can I trust these people with my serious business if all they're talking about is pop culture?
Right.
But at the same time, pop culture is pop culture for a reason. Like, it's, Andy Warhol did pretty well with pop culture, So
that's right.
And Marvel movies make a lot of money, or used to. I don't know if they still do, but I don't know if anybody's going to see the new Marvel movie. It doesn't seem like it. Nobody's talking about that.
They've killed a lot of the recent Marvel.
Yeah, when you take out half the universe, you lose some of your audience for sure.
Well, and there's some people that pride themselves on not watching any TV or being connected to this at all, which I find fascinating, because it's like, what is that? Is that you're just, I watch it because I'm in the business, because I want to hear what's being touted, what most people are consuming, because that's a value, right? From a positioning standpoint, and just tonality and sort of energy of individuals, and what sort of the community vibe might be like. And so I feel like you don't have to be interested in watching TV to get business benefit from streaming or online or traditional television.
Eugene Schwartz was the copywriter I was talking about. He did a talk at a publisher, 20 years ago or something, 30 years ago. He's like, if you're not paying attention to pop culture, your
Yeah.
career will last about 3 years. Because the
Yeah.
fact is, pop culture drives entertainment, drives, whether that's football, whether that's movies, TV, Netflix.
Yeah.
Like if you're not up on, whether it's Breaking Bad, 20 years ago, Game of Thrones, if you're not making some references to that stuff every once in a while, you definitely, I think, missing some chances.
Yeah.
And you're going to miss some of that relatability stuff. Like even if I don't watch Game of Thrones, but you as a business kind of make an analogy with it, and I've heard everybody else in the office talking about Game of Thrones, I'm going to think you're a little bit up to date. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, is that?
Yeah. I mean, our guest last week, David Garfinkel, he referenced The Wire, a show that's been, I mean, that show is out like in the early 2000s. I mean, it's almost 20 years old, but it still has relevance. People still refer to that because it was a great show,
Yeah.
So there's so much relevance in those TV shows, Breaking Bad, Sopranos,
Ted Lasso.
Yeah, exactly. That, just people that gravitate to, if they don't watch, even if they're not into pop culture constantly, they know enough about some of the more popular shows or movies that are out there, to tie those into whatever your industry is. I mean,
well, I think I write a lot of email copy for clients, ongoing nurture sequences, things like that.
Yeah.
And I will try to slide in just like a one-liner that only people that watch that would really get,
Right. Yep.
But that resonates with people. It's kind of like Bill Mueller story, story selling machine that he talks about some of that stuff. It's like even working in a one-liner that like maybe 30-50% of your audience really gets, establishes this connection, I think.
Yeah.
That you can't do with like facts and figures and logic and anything else. Right. It's like, oh, these guys watch the same stuff I watch, cool. They're kind of cool. They're like me. Because that's ultimately what people have to decide when they want to do business with you is, oh, these people are like me, or at least they get me.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah. So you had one more example, I think, which is a little bit older, Michelle. So let's go there. It was Heinz, I believe.
For Heinz. So I follow an individual on LinkedIn, and his name is Mike Gelb. And I won the contest and won some, I guess, very exclusive Air Jordans because of my knowledge of this Heinz story. Yeah, it was a nice prize. And that was right before the island, Sean.
Okay.
So basically, Henry Heinz went from bankruptcy to a $44 billion sauce brand. Just kind of for backdrop. But what I really liked about this, a couple of things, some of this marketing, some product design, some of the public relations. But one of the things he did was that he put his ketchup in glass clear bottles because the rest of his competition didn't really have a clean looking product. So they were putting the ketchup in brown bottles to hide that, right? So super transparent. But that's not the most interesting part. Just want to kind of give you that for background and you get to the
That's
right
interesting.
page.
I remember seeing that. Have you ever watched the show, Michelle? Like things that built America on the History Channel. So there's foods that built America.
I have seen that. Yeah.
Heinz was one of those, and he talked about that. So that's
absolutely. Yeah.
Making the ketchups in his kitchen and all that kind of stuff. So
So
everybody else was having botulism and everything else. The stuff those guys did back in those days was so much ballsier.
Absolutely.
Than what people are doing today. Like
the
risk they took and the expense that they sunk in was just the cost of.
You're just waiting for a lawsuit.
The cost of entry was so high back then compared to now.
Yep.
Unbelievable. So anyway, finish your story.
I love this one. So the pickle pin. So Heinz was at the World's Fair that was being held in Chicago, and he had a tiny booth on the second floor. But no visibility. Who wants to climb stairs? So he offered people a pickle pin if they would come to the booth. And so everybody, just crowded to the booth. The building almost fell down. So the story goes.
Wow.
So just an idea there. And then factory tours.
What's a pickle pin?
A pickle pin is just almost like you see some ornaments sometimes during Christmas time. It's just literally like a pickle, like just a sweet pickle. And it was enough to get people to climb stairs and, come to their booth.
So I guess back then, free. Yeah. And back then that was before swag, right? Hit the
it's the original swag. Yes.
Now there's so many pins. The last thing you want is a pin from a booth, right? Because
that's right.
Although you can get a year's supply if you go to any given trade show.
True.
Pick up your pins.
And then factory tours. So the government they were looking to eliminate unsanitary factory conditions. And all of the owners were against this because think of the cost. I mean, this is pre-OSHA, right? And back in the day. So he went against the grain and opened his factory to public tours. And then thousands came to that. So just some really transparent, honest activity really was enough to set him apart. And so those are, to me, really great examples of you can be your authentic self. You don't have to necessarily be kitschy. You don't have to tag on to something, although it can be super effective. And it will be if you make that right, connection, that Venn diagram or the one-liner in the copy that 30% of the people read about. But you can also be effective just by reflecting your values. Letting the world see what you stand for in an authentic way. People are attracted to that. And as long as it's not, as long as it's not a put on, people will recognize that. And I feel like be attracted to the brand. So, I guess in closing, what I would say, authenticity is really important in all public relations, or it'll be, a big fail. It might be successfully initially, but it certainly won't have staying power and you won't gain credibility overall of your brand. So, really reflect out what your values are, what your persona is and wants to be in terms of that public facing view, and look at efforts, causes, brand assets, your brand promise that really reflect that, and then deliver on that, because not delivering on it will lose a whole bunch of all that street cred you tried to gain. You'll be in a negative position. So I think that's the most important thing, no matter how you slice it. Just be your authentic self.
Yeah, I like that. I have a client who in a niche, and she talks about lead generation and getting clients in this niche, and one of her points is just like be a good human, be relatable, don't always talk about business, talk about other stuff. And I think that's what I'm hearing here is like don't be one dimensional where all you talk about is business. Tap into all the other things, whether it's a charity like K9 for Warriors or pop culture or whatever. If you just be an interesting human, that goes a very long way in branding, and even companies can do that.
Absolutely.
So I've got one more thing I want to ask about, and then we'll wrap up, because I am conflicted on this brand and how they're going to do PR, because it seems to me there's a lot of overlap between really good PR and really good branding. Seems like you kind of need both. Would you agree with that, Michelle?
I absolutely agree.
Okay. So I'm going to put on the screen here. There's this company. Have you heard of this? It's called freewater.io. Have you heard of this, Michelle?
I have not.
Never heard of them.
Okay. There's part of the problem. So their model is they give away free water because the ad space, they turn the label into ad space. So then they will give this water away. And they actually have a longer term vision of having free supermarkets where all the products in the supermarket are ad supported on the labels. So my question is, how does that work if you're trying to brand this idea of freewater.io, but your brand is not anywhere on the label? It seems like a catch-22 to me. I think it's a cool idea, and I think I think it lends itself to kind of the future where we're going. They also don't do plastic, they do aluminum or cartons. Right. But as you can see here on the screen, the entire thing.
So their whole revenue model is advertising from
people who want to buy the space on the container, and then
yeah.
they give the product away to consumers. Michelle, what's your gut reaction to that?
Well, I love the qualities that you speak of, and the cause certainly there. Like that in and of itself is so powerful, but it's getting drowned out a little bit. The .io is usually for a tech company. It's in input output.
Right.
So I would, it wasn't the question on the table, but my first advice to them would be, rebrand their company and definitely maintain the real estate for their own brand. I mean, to me, that would be part of the sales proposition of why it would be even more effective for those buying ad space, because you're losing that social sort of corporate responsibility, be a good human piece of it, by not having the brand identity established or even recognizable of freewater.io. But I love the notion. I mean, it's super fantastic, but how does it take off?
I think the idea is like,
so it's tap water in a aluminum can. Is that what it is?
Or a carton. Yes. Either one. But
where do they find that? Where do they find this free water at?
I don't know. It says spring water, but who knows what that means anymore. But I mean, their bigger vision, which again, I've seen several companies do this, right? Where they start in a niche like water and they name their company after it, even though their bigger vision is like free grocery stores. Then you got to pivot with your name, so, but yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the carton that's spinning. They've got free water across the very top of the container. But nowhere else on the package. So you kind of miss it. And I think, Michelle, if I'm reading you right or hearing you right, like you kind of need both, because if you want to support a mission, especially because this seems more like a mission, right? Than anything else, then people need to feel proud holding your product. A lot of people pick products because like Liquid Death, because it tells them something. When you hold it, it says something about who you are. Right. If it's a strong brand, strong mission or whatever. And this, I think, lacks that. And that was my original thinking was like, okay,
free water sounds like tap water.
Yeah.
To me.
Yeah. It's not cause-based in the name. Yeah.
I mean, we had a guest on a couple of times. She has a great book called The 3-Word Rebellion.
Yeah.
Where she talks about names. It's a great book. And any of our newer listeners, it's been a couple of years since we had her on. 3-Word Rebellion, whether it's Black Lives Matter or a lot of the political slogans, things like that tend to fit that. They do a really good job of that, whether you agree with them or not. They pick great names. So, she talks about that. And I think this brand is missing that, despite I think it's like groundbreaking idea, which is funny. I kind of did this when I had a handyman business. I would do 1-page flyers in the mailbox back in the early 2000s. And on the one side, I would put my own flyer, and on the back side, I would sell 2 spaces to like a electrician or somebody else something I didn't do.
So smart.
Yeah. And they would pay for my flyer. I did it out of pure survival, so I didn't have to pay for the flyers. But I think I think they could do a little bit better job. Maybe half the label is theirs and half the label is paid for.
Right. You'd want to be proud holding it and show off that affiliation. I mean, there is an ego piece to this too, that unfortunately people do want to be recognized for their good deeds. Most people want that selfie while they're giving the donation, or they want this or that. Right. So I feel like they're missing that connectivity piece of it, but hey, we can grow the valuation. We've got 3 people right here to do it.
Yeah, that's right. So I think it's an interesting brand to watch. I think they're here in Austin, as all the cool brands are. So I think they're worth watching and to see how they make this work, if they can make this work. I think they're going to do really well at things like trade shows, at things like that, but can they break into mainstream market with this model? Yeah. That's the question.
Yeah, that word free, I love the word free because it's very powerful. We know that, in persuasion, in selling, but you have to monitor the way that you use that. And I wonder if using that in a for premium water. Maybe it's not premium water if they're
they just say spring water. So
spring water. It. I'm not sure that those two go. Free and spring water makes me think, well, this is right out of a tap, and so I don't know. We'll see.
yeah, it feels more like swag than like water. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I don't know how. I know they're planning on getting it in convenience stores and things like that, but right now it feels like swag, where you slap your label on it, you hand it out at a trade show or at an event, like instead of Liquid Death, they pass it out at concerts for free.
Yep.
Right.
And their source of revenue. The advertisers that are on the label, that's their revenue source.
Right.
Primarily.
Which, to be fair, some of the biggest brands in the world, that's their model, right? It's advertising based.
Yeah.
Google is based on other people advertising on their platform.
Right.
So from a dollars and cents, it makes sense. It just something feels off and disconnected.
Yeah, maybe it's easy to get brand confusion. They need the third word.
Yeah, they do. They need something else. So
well,
this has been a fun conversation, Michelle. How can people learn more about you? Well, first, if you could give people one word of wisdom or one sentence or a billboard or whatever advice about PR, what would it be?
Be authentic.
Okay.
Yeah.
There you go. Simple and sweet.
Damn it. I thought we were going to talk about Britney Spears.
We were going to.
That's the next show. She's already breaking records with their book. So we'll come back. Let's do this again.
I forgot about Britney. Yes.
And Justin Timberlake has turned off his comments. So yes, there are more to come.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I've
we'll have to
caught some
that.
news this week that, that relationship goes back way back, but
we'll have to do a separate title just to. I haven't been following that, so I wasn't even.
Yeah. Separate title.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. All right. So I'm going to push you a little bit further, Michelle. When you say be authentic, how do you define authentic from a PR standpoint?
So be who you are publicly when no one's watching privately.
Okay.
Right. So if you're wrapped around a tree, then geniuses are misunderstood.
Okay. I like it. All right. How can people learn more about what you do and where to find you?
So connect with me on LinkedIn, Michelle Love CMO, and clearvisionstrategicmarketing.com needs a little refresh, but still relevant. It's interesting, communications, given all the changes that have happened and all the new advancements in communications channels, some of the same things still apply as they always did, right? So be true, communicate honestly, be transparent and available, and connect with your customers, prospects, clients, and benefactors. And I think, the rest will take care of itself.
All right. Sounds good. Jonathan, anything else?
Hey, that sounds like us, man. If you do a podcast on beer, you just embrace it, and we just drink beer,
Yeah.
Despite our negative comments.
Yeah, we embrace them, actually. We make fun of them every week.
Well, that's all good PR, right?
So,
yeah. We didn't even get comments this week. I'm a little disappointed in our 3 viewers that we're watching today.
That's all right. I was surprised. I should have taken your advice, Sean, and named this the Taylor Swift, Travis Kelce podcast.
The trailer effect.
Yes.
Taylor Swift trailer effect. You got to get her name in there. Yeah.
Yes.
That's right.
So we'll
rename it for sure. So, all right, Michelle, we're going to put you back in the green room. Do you have just a minute to hang out while we close? And then we'll want to talk to you.
Sounds good.
Behind the scenes. So, all right, Jonathan, I'll let you do put on your radio voice and take us out.
Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you.
Time for me to close out this episode of Persuasion by the Pint. You can find us on all of your podcast platforms, whether it be Stitcher Radio, Spotify, iHeart, you name it. We're there, and you can find us every week. Again, persuasionbythepint.com. Leave us 5 stars if you so choose. We would greatly appreciate it. Sean, it's been fun, and we will see you all next week. Do we have a guest next week, Sean?
Not that I know of.
Another guest?
Nope. We're gonna have to figure something else on our own.
That might be good.
Yeah.
We might need to do a solo, what we call it, a flight next week.
Flight next week with some random flight of persuasion here.
Yes. I'll be at a major trade show next week.
Oh, cool.
And I will have some major takeaways on a flight of persuasion of how bad selling is done at trade shows based on this show that I'm going to be at next week.
Take some pictures.
I will.
We'll put them on the screen and stuff.
I'm going to take some pictures. I'm going to pull some, as I always do. I'm going to pull some of those one sheets that they do that they spend so much time and money doing to no advantage.
So many meetings.
I will be laughing my head off.
And don't forget to get a picture of the fishbowl with the business cards in
That's right. The fishbowl with the cards.
That nobody enters into a database.
We need to bring our previous guest back on the trade shows where he talked about the what is it? He did the juggling the fire at the trade shows.
The other Jonathan, right?
Yeah, that's right. Jonathan Pritchard.
Yes.
Jonathan Pritchard. Yeah, that's right. So anyway, yeah, it should be fun. We'll talk about that. We've got so many things to talk about. I'm sure we'll do a complete flight on our next episode. But Sean, we'll see you next week, man. It's been fun.
Yeah. See ya.
All right.